Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Radiator Arms, once described as a podcast. Here we have myself, James, aka JayEmm on Cars, the man in the cans, Will the Plank.
Hello, everyone.
And of course, not forgetting, and of SPORTZ N TOURING and JayEmm and Friends.
Yo, what's up?
And today we are tackling the thorny, spiky, sometimes prickly, and if you feel that, you probably should turn off the breaker, topic of how do we make EVs sexy? They're out there, they're around, but nobody wants them. And we've started to wonder, is it just an image problem they have, or are they truly doomed? Let's go. Now, here's the funny thing. Ant and I have both driven EVs over quite a while now. I started driving them about, I think, 2018. Ant, what was your first experience?
I don't remember. I think it was 2019 or 2020. I had a Mustang Mach-E for a week.
Okay.
As a press car, bizarrely. I don't know how I managed to swing that. But, yeah, and that was my first EV experience.
So we've both been driving them for a little while, but you only had, I think, your first ever go in an EV
in January.
Yeah, January of this year. And now, Will, you are an EV owner.
I am, and it's not even because the car is necessarily electric. It's just because I liked what the car is, and it happened to be electric, and I realised I can actually fit this in my life quite nicely.
But let's be honest here, though. What you've purchased, I think we can describe it as many things. Sexy isn't high on the list, is it?
No.
No. And for the benefit of the audience, what have you bought?
I have a Dacia Spring. It's specifically the Expression model with the 65 horsepower motor.
Yeah, which I should point out for all listening, or indeed watching on YouTube, that I did nearly die when you told me that that is actually what you might term the power kit.
Yes, it is. Because
there's a less powerful one.
Yeah, there's one with 45 horsepower.
Blimey, that's not much more than a go-kart.
So basically, the one with 45 horsepower has a 0 to 60 time of about
10 years.
Yeah.
It's not far off. It's about 20 seconds.
Oh, God.
It has no rapid charging on it. But it's one of those ones where I think if you lived in London and you were never going to take that car out of London, I could understand, because what's the max? You guys, you go into London a lot. What's the max speed you really go to in London at any given time?
Oh, God, once you get into Central, 20.
Exactly.
If you're lucky.
And who needs a car that can really go much faster in London?
I mean, there is some truth to that, but let's also be honest here. If you were to try and get to London, I think you might reach it, but without a charge, you're not coming home.
Well, actually, you'll be surprised. So the car has, now I'm going to talk about my one quickly. It's got the 30 kilowatt rapid charger, which still isn't that rapid. It does about 20 to 80% in 45 minutes on a DC charger. On a home wall box, you can go from 0 to 100 in about 4 hours, or 0 to 100 on a 3-pin plug in about 10 to 12 hours, depending on the situation, because it's only got a 26 kilowatt hour battery pack, which means the range is stated from the company about 140 miles. Real world, I think you're somewhere, depending if you're going on motorway, if you're going on open roads, higher speeds between 80 and 120. I regularly would say I get about 75 to 80 miles, and I've still got about 30 to 40% left in the battery.
That's not bad. So for some reference, for those who don't really speak EV, first off, thank you for listening to this. And don't worry, we will start talking sexy cars very shortly. That's kind of roughly in terms of battery size to an early Leaf. And those would do nowhere near that mileage. So it's actually quite impressive. It's come along quite a long way. Although you've been telling me recently about this car's convoluted development history, which is just brilliant. I love it.
Oh yeah, it started off as a Renault Kwid, I believe it was, an Indian-made Renault for the Indian market, basically. And then they I don't know if they were always made in China, but basically the car started going over to China when it was electrified. It's got another name as a Dongfeng Nanobox EX1, I believe it is, which is a
I
hilarious
prefer
name.
that name. Yeah.
I want a sticker for the Merc which says my other car is a Dongfeng.
Yeah.
I think that I might have to have one made, you know. But it's weird. It's a Chinese-made car, but actually it's all right. When you're in it, you don't really feel like it's a cheap kind of piece of crap.
And your mum has also purchased
Yes.
one, hasn't it? So does that really mean that between the two of you, you've got a couple of quid?
Yeah, exactly. But what's interesting is we both went for different specs, and this is going to be good for testing because we're going to plan some little tests on this, aren't we? Because
Yes, we are.
I've mentioned the name Linglong before as a joke. I never thought I'd see a car with Linglong tyres, let alone own a car with Linglong tyres.
The shame.
I think it's important because I didn't know this, but it's important to let listeners know that Linglong is a legitimate tyre brand.
I'm not
It's
being
not just a
racially
meme,
insensitive. That is a legitimate make. But the car's made in China, so you expect it to be made with Chinese tyres. However, the tyres are the worst tyres I've ever used on any car
Which
ever.
isn't because they're Chinese.
No,
because
no, no,
actually
no.
they can make some really, really good
Yes, they
stuff.
can. Yeah.
And there's lots of brands out there too that I know of which you might think, oh, they're just some rubbishy secondhand low quality brand, whatever. But they're actually owned by the major tyre manufacturers you've heard of. Many of them have got like another department. A bit like, Dacia is to Renault. Other companies will have sort of offshoots where you're like, there's still sometimes maybe last year's compound or something like that, or a slightly older design or made in a different factory. They're the Mexican Strat of tyres.
Yes, they are.
But they're still really, really good. And indeed, things like Hankooks, I know a few years ago people would have laughed at, they're now genuine OEM fit on Audi, I think Mini as well. Nankangs have started appearing on stuff. Nankangs actually do make some decent tyres as well. So yeah.
I want to say though, I got to drive the Spring about a week or two ago, about a week ago, and I think I have more grip in the wet on my Michelins, all my Conti 7s, than that car has in the dry. It was actually a little bit scary at first. I just to prove a point, I was driving along the road and I put in about a 25-degree angle, and the car just kept going straight.
Yeah, so this is why I've changed them to Continental Ultra Contacts, and I tell you what, the difference is phenomenal. Instead of the car wanting to plough forward in any kind of corner where you put any kind of throttle down, the traction control light might as well have been your best friend because it was always talking to you.
If anybody out there is listening that happens to have access to a sort of reasonably sized piece of tarmac and is a friend of the channel, could they please get in touch? Because I've just developed a very sudden desire to drive Will's Dongfeng over there and stick some McDonald's trays under the back wheels just to see if it can be done. Because I think, a key part of making cars sexy, particularly for younger people, is making them attainable. And that is why I wanted to start with the Spring, because you picked it up for how much deposit?
No deposit whatsoever.
And a month?
£170 a month with 0% finance.
Now that's pretty darn good. And over how many years is that?
And that's over 4 years.
With what mileage?
6,000 miles a year.
Okay, so that's, for most people, that's going to cover your usage needs. And if you are in the situation where you can charge cheaply, ignore for a second the fact it's an EV. I think that is a heck of a lot of car.
You know what? This is one of the reasons I was so interested. I probably would have been kind of semi-interested in it had it had a petrol engine as well, because I just liked the look of it. It was a bit weird. It's a bit quirky. It's small, which I love. And all my cars are massive, basically. The Merc is massive.
Yeah.
The Golf was massive. So this has been a little breath of fresh air. You can feed it round the country roads and a lorry can come towards you and you go, all right, it's fine. We don't mention the fact it's got a 1-star safety rating with only 50% occupancy survival rate or something like that. But my solution to that is just not to crash. And if I do die in a fiery Spring crash, at least it'll make for interesting content on the podcasts that start without me.
I'd offer to get a cage fitted to it, but I suppose you don't want to affect your economy too much.
Exactly.
That is quite scary. 50% survival.
Well, it's something like this. So when you look at the Euro NCAP rating, they only gave it like a 50% score out of 100 for the adult occupants. There are lots of bits which are poor. But to be fair to them, yes. To be fair to them, they haven't tested the facelift model. This was for the one that was out in Europe. And bear in mind, they added structural rigidity things to it that weren't in the Indian and Chinese market.
Oh, it's just the way you haven't got one of those. Otherwise, in this wind, you probably have to sort of tie it down or put some ballast.
You would.
Or just blow away.
You would.
The thing is, there you go. Your car is sexy. Everyone always makes a point about, that car's trying to kill me. Well, this one probably will.
Yeah.
So, there you go. That makes the car, that gives the car a sexy point, surely.
Mind you, it'd be better than a Maestro in an accident. I saw a crash test of a Maestro once, and that's probably one of the reasons I sold it, actually.
Yeah, well, that's a 30-year-old car, so
or my Rover 100.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, at least you've got a cage in there.
Yes, I do. There's something.
You do. There's something in that.
But to be fair, when I look at the Spring, the current iteration, the one that you have, I actually think the only thing that's wrong with it is it sits too high. If it just sat lower, like a hatchback would, then I think it would be a cool looking little hatchback.
I was underneath it the other day and I had a good look at the suspension. I think we could get a company to modify some Polo 6N or Mark II Golf coilovers, and I reckon they'd go on. So if there's anybody who does any coilover stuff out there listening, do you want to lower a spring, the first slam spring?
So
the lowering spring.
Here's how I think we could make even the Spring sexy.
Ooh,
okay,
go on.
And I can make your Spring sexy in just 4 words. You ready, gentlemen?
Mm-hmm.
1 make race series.
Oh, yes. Do you know
That
what?
would be hilarious.
Because they're capped to 80 miles an hour as well. So,
Yeah, come on. This would be great. Can you imagine as well? You could do it as like a feeder series for young kids. Maybe convert them to central driving position, because it's probably quite easy to do in something like that. Yeah. Cage it up so they've got, a 60% chance of surviving, and just send it out. And
You could do that on go-kart tracks, big ones like Shellington.
yeah, around Silverstone, probably not a good idea because there's a risk they might fall asleep on some of the straights. But send around a go-kart track, very Cadwell Park, Blyton Park, like the smaller tracks, Mallory Park and Lyddon Hill. Lyddon Hill will basically feel like Brands Hatch in a spring.
Yeah.
I mean, Lyddon Hill's only basically 3 corners.
I'd like to see that. I think we need cheap back to basics racing, and for a car that basically worked out as 13 grand out the door, you can't get much cheaper than that for a car.
No, I think that's really, really cool. And a line of accessories, something like that, bit of customization, personalization, just a cheap, affordable car is already a very, very cool thing.
Well, to finish talking about the Spring, I'll say we've got a couple of things planned. We're going to take my mother's one, which is the Spec Up, the Extreme one, which added, I know, the Extreme Spring, which added a touch screen with Apple CarPlay and a reversing camera, as well as front park sensor. Oh, great fact about this. The rear windows on the Extreme one are electric. Mine are manual, but you as the driver cannot operate the rear windows. They can only be operated from the rear. So to stop children getting to them, there's a button on the dash which just turns the rear windows off. So you can't do them up yourself, which is absolutely hilarious. But yes, we've got some tests planned, and that'll be coming in some future videos. And I think we're going to have some fun with some cheap cars.
That's so lazy. Now, over the last couple of weeks, I've been away up in beautiful York, and I've been driving a number of different cars. And amongst them were 2 EVs, both of which I think are kind of cool. First up, the Jaguar I-Pace. I think even now, that's a really good-looking car. It feels like a Jaguar inside. It drives really nicely. It's got a good amount of space, not a massive car, kind of sexy because it's got the Jag badge. You can get it with 22-inch wheels on, for crying out loud, and it actually rides quite well. Here's the funny thing, though. The base ones are 18s. I don't think I've ever known a car where there's such a big difference in size between the base wheels and the big ones. The stupid thing is, of course, the big ones look hilarious because the brakes are actually pretty small, as they are on many EVs, although they are discs all around. And here's the thing. You can have yourself a Jaguar I-Pace for 10 grand.
Oh, that's cheap, isn't it?
Yeah. And, okay, that's an early one with some miles on it, so on and so forth. But that's not a write-off. That's not a Cat S, Cat N, anything else. It's not a stolen, recovered. That's just a working, running Jaguar that in 2019, gentlemen, was European Car of the Year and would have cost something like 75, 80 grand, I think, to its first owner. 10,000 quid. Now, battery in your car is what, 26 kilowatt hour?
Yeah.
90 kilowatt hour in the Jag. So you can realistically do 200, 250 miles. It's got obviously faster charge capability, 100 kilowatts, so not great by modern standards, but it works well enough. And it drives great. And honestly, if I were ever going to be tempted into an EV, something like that would be quite interesting.
You see, you've got the advantage of you'd probably be a cash buyer, wouldn't you?
Yeah, for something like that, yeah.
But the problem with when these cars get a bit older, because I did look before I bought the Spring at used e-Golfs, MG5 estates, and a few other bits and bobs. And the reason I didn't is because I'm PCPing, basically. The interest, because it's 0% finance on the Spring, that's what made the figures make sense to me. Had it had any kind of interest, I wouldn't have touched it. But any HP deal, a lot of the time, 10 to 13%. And you realise that 10 grand car actually is like, like 17, 18 or something stupid like that by the time. It's a lot more. Yeah. So before anybody does say, why didn't you buy one of those, Will, before, I wanted something really small and I get a 7-year warranty with this car.
Yeah, and with the Jaguar at that price, you're getting no warranty at all. And I think the big problem with stuff like that is if anything goes wrong with it, the whole car's written off.
Exactly.
Like, that's it. It's gone. And unfortunately, there were some well-known issues with the Jaguar battery pack. Apparently, LG had an issue of some description, and they only fixed it in the final year the car was on sale. Very frustrating. And if you've got a warranty, great. And the Jaguar warranty, I think, is about £100 a month, give or take, but well worth having. If you've got the warranty, who cares? The problem is, though, even if the warranty does actually cover the issue, you'll usually find there's a little clause in there that says, we will pay up to the value of your car. And that's the problem all of these things are having now, where you've got, you've got a 10 grand Jag, it's got a problem, which actually is a small problem in a big battery pack, but most of the time they just want to replace the whole thing. That could be 20 odd thousand pounds. If your car's only worth 10, that's it. And something I'd like to see is more specialist companies out there, and it's quite difficult because of the nature of what it is, that can repair these things. That, I think, in of itself would really encourage people to go for these cars, because as used purchases, honestly, legitimately, if somebody's coming to me and they're a petrol-heady type and they want something that's kind of sensible daily, it's got some speed but isn't going to break the bank, there are a whole bunch of EVs out there that it's really, really hard to argue against. I mean, you've got the I-Pace obviously for buttons, but also stuff like the Tesla Model 3. Let's just ignore some of the Tesla stuff for a second, but like as a package, a Tesla Model 3 Performance at £15,000 is just staggering.
Yeah, I've been out as a passenger in a Model 3 Performance a couple of years back, and the performance was it felt close almost to like the feeling I got in one of the Ferraris when I was in the passenger seat. It's nuts the way those things accelerate. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think right now the sexiest EV that is available for purchase, or at least it was until they sold out, is the new Renault 5 GT Turbo.
Yes, they called it by a number as well, didn't they? I know exactly the one you mean. The tribute to the old school 1980s, like
with the wide body kit.
Oh yeah, it's a tie for me between that and the Hyundai concept that they are apparently building, which is a lot more money, I think.
Is it the 7N?
Something like that. And basically, because the Renault, I think, was actually less money than I thought it was going to be. I think it's like 150, 180 grand, something like that. I thought they were going to say it's £500,000 or something.
No, it's in the hundred. I think the lower hundreds, actually. Yeah. I actually know someone who's got one on order.
Yeah, that looks so. It's got a proper rally handbrake, hasn't it? And stuff like that. See, that to me, again, you're like, that car's sold out. Nothing to do with the fact it's an EV. No. It's because it's just cool.
Yep.
It's why the Renault 5s are selling like hotcakes.
Yeah. And the Micra is not.
Yes.
Yeah, you can clearly tell with that one that that Renault had the lead because it does look okay. It's massive compared to an old Renault 5, but it's got the proportions right. It's doing the thing right. I saw a Renault 4 recently. I wasn't quite as taken by that. It looks a little bit ordinary to me.
I don't know. I quite like it. I think it's definitely very in keeping with the retro throwback style.
Yeah.
And I think, especially when the ones with the canvas retracting roofs come out, I think that'll just be, for certain people, that'll be the absolute dog's danglies, I think.
Yeah, the Hyundai was the Envision 74.
There you go.
Mate, when I first saw that, I was just like, oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. But isn't that going for like 300,000 or something crazy like that?
I think even more than that. It's serious money, and they're making a fairly limited run. I think smaller run than Renault are with theirs. But again, that was a car I looked at and I just went, yes, please.
Have you guys had much thought about the MG Cyberstar?
I've sat in one.
You sat in one? Okay.
It's just not a looker. It just reminds me of something that, as a child you might draw, being like, this is a sexy car. And you're like, okay, cool. I can see what you're thinking, but you need to go to art class now and learn about proportions and good design and things.
But the doors go up.
Yeah, the doors do go up. And the interior's quite nice. It's pretty decent. The guy whose it was said to me that he basically bought it because it's a lot of power, not a massive amount of money for what you get. And he knew that nobody else was going to buy one. So at the very least, you're going to have something in the car park that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is growing on me, that car. At first, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. But the more I look at it, the more I think, I can kind of, it's got maybe something of a slightly butchered F-Type about it, hasn't it?
Yeah, it is a rather unfortunate looking so-and-so. I mean,
do you know what, though? When I first saw it, I actually thought, no, actually, that looks quite cool. But maybe because it's, a two-seater roadster sports car, and I just thought, well, yeah, that's what we need. We need stuff like that as EVs to make it an interesting market. I don't know if it looks that awful.
No, I don't think it looks that awful. And I say butchered F-Type with love.
Now, I do have one worry, or one particularly large worry. At the time of recording, at least, everybody knows that the next generation of the Porsche Cayman and Boxster is going to be all electric, built on presumably a brand new ground up electric car platform. I believe the order book for the 718 generation car is now closed. I think it actually closed in Europe before it did here. But if you want a new Cayman or Boxster, basically you got to buy one from stock now or wait for the new one. And I find it very interesting that the order book still isn't, or at least apparently still isn't officially open for the new one. And it's been in development for quite some time now. They've been working on it for a long, long time. And I do have one just gigantic overriding worry about this, which is the fact that obviously it's going to be quite an expensive car. It just has to be. There's lots of technology, lots of R&D. I think even though the cost of making something an EV has certainly come down a bit, at the end of the day, the cost of type approving a car hasn't got cheaper, and there's lots of new technology in the car, probably even excluding the electric bits. Right? It's a new platform. Building any new platform from scratch takes a lot. The last one was more or less like 10 years old, maybe a bit older by the time it was retired. So it's an expensive car. And I have this real concern that Porsche are sat there basically with the car ready. And I think they're currently in the position of, have you ever been, on the way to school on the bus and you thought you'd leave your homework till late, then you didn't actually do it. Then you kind of hastily scrawled something in the back of your book, which you could use to trace which corner you were going around as you wrote it. And basically, when you're waiting for that lesson to come along where you've got to hand in what you know is a piece of utter and total tripe, and the teacher's going to see through you in an instant. I do worry Porsche of sitting on that car basically going, when we release this, it's going to be a disaster. And the car is probably good. The car itself is probably really good. It's probably going to be one of the best electric sports cars made to date.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody can make a good electric car that handles well, it's got to be Porsche, right?
Indeed. And so that's why I'm concerned about it. Might even make a video on the main channel to talk a bit more about this because I think it's an interesting topic. I think Porsche are worried that if they release this and it's a complete and total failure, obviously they as a company are really in trouble, because historically the Boxster Cayman has been one of their volume sellers, and from the sports car perspective, it's always been the volume seller for as long as it's been out. You know, outsells 911 by a fair margin. And I think this is going to show to them, like, nah, sorry, like, people just aren't interested in the car, maybe not interested in it at the price you need to sell it to make any money. And on a wider scale, I am concerned that other companies might be waiting for Porsche to do this, watching and then going, well, crikey, if Porsche can't make an electric sports car work, then what chance have we got?
I wonder if Caterham are among them, because they've got the Project V that was launched about 2 years ago as a concept, and showing that, you know, you can make a small, compact, lightweight.
Yeah. Well, that's what 1250 kilos or so, isn't it?
That's projected. The target weight was, I think, 1100, and I think they were going to go for something like a 56 kilowatt hour battery or something along those lines. So the idea being you'd get range from lightness rather than from a big battery. And that has been sort of, I don't know, shown around the shows for a couple of years now, and doesn't seem to be significantly closer to actually coming to market as far as I can see. You know, I suppose I could ask my mate Bob to find out what's going on there, but I don't know how much of that I would be able to say anyway. But it's a car that was quite good looking. I thought when I first saw it, it was sexy. It had a couple of little oddities to it that I'm sure would have to be ironed out anyway before it would actually go to market. Although when I spoke to the designer, Anthony Gianarelli, he did say that the car is pretty much 90 to 95% able to be homologated. And I just thought, why, you know, that is just a great idea. But of course, it requires quite a lot of money to develop.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they're almost trying to wait and see what happens with the Porsche as well, because if that sells well, then maybe theirs will have half a chance. Yeah,
absolutely, because, you know, I think that from where it looked, the Caterham was almost like an electric version of the Alpine A110. You know, it's not actually massively heavier.
Better looking.
You know, better looking. You know, it would still have decent range. You know, with a battery pack that size and being relatively lightweight, I think it would be a really good performer. It would be almost like an electric, slightly upmarket Exige. I mean, I put a letter of intent in. You know, on their website, I signed up and said, I want to know more. I'm genuinely interested, because to me, this looks like a really cool thing. To me, that looked exactly how, you know, an electric sports car should, i.e., it looks like a sports car.
Yep.
You know, the new Maserati Gran Turismo. Same thing again. You look at the new Maserati Gran Turismo, and that they took an interesting route because they developed it so that you could have either the petrol-powered version or an EV version. And from outside, other than I think the obviously lack of exhaust pipe, you can't tell. And I think that's amazing. And it proves that not all EVs have to be built in the same way. So, because a lot of them are built using what you'd call the skateboard method. So you've got your dirty, great big massive battery pack, and that sits between effectively the front and rear axles. And it's a very efficient way to do an EV, and it's very simple because you just plonk a body on top of that. And I think there are lots and lots of other benefits in terms of vehicle dynamics and so on and so forth. But you do compromise the looks. You know, you have just added probably at least 4 to 6 inches to the height of your car.
Well, the thing is, as the technology improves with the batteries, it's only going to get better, and they're basically just going to be able to go in the places of where fuel tanks went. Because you look at the Spring, for instance, the battery pack, 26 kilowatt hours, fits in where the fuel tank is. The underside of that car is not modified because it was basically built on an ICE platform. Yeah. So I think, you know, as the batteries get better, that'll make it more viable to do that kind of thing. Because if you remember some of the first electric Minis and the first e-Golfs, I'm pretty sure they did the same thing. Range was a bit piss poor, you know, and a lot of people bought the petrol ones perhaps over that because, you know, as I said, as energy density gets better, we're going to have perhaps more options for cars that are plug-in hybrids, that are petrols, and that are full EV. And so, you've kind of got the best of all worlds depending on what the consumer requires.
So, I don't know if you know this, but many years ago, Volvo developed a supercapacitor body panels. So you could actually build the power source into things like your a rear firewall bulkhead or into the actual frame of the car. And I think even things like the boot ended up being like this sort of, I think it's graphene based material.
Okay.
And yeah, fascinating idea. So that the actual body and frame of the car would essentially store the energy. But because it was a solid state storage, you didn't have the same sort of risk. So you're not going to get electrocuted just by touching it. In order to get the electricity out of it, it has to come out from, I don't know, the very specific, in a specific way. So, and actually it was Lamborghini with, I think it was the
CM. That was the
Cyan, yeah, the Cyan. That was it. They had a supercapacitor behind in the bulkhead behind the driver.
Did the Countach use it as well? I can't recall.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, but the Cyan definitely had it because with the supercapacitor, it doesn't really, it won't hold charge overnight, will it?
No.
It doesn't work like a regular battery, but you can put power into it and take power out of it in a way that you can't with a regular battery.
The speed is the speed. But actually, the Volvo system was designed to be like rapid charge. So the idea is that you would be able to charge it within like 5 to 10 minutes. It's really, really fast. So, but it was just too expensive at the time because graphene is like, I think it's graphene. Is it graphene? Yeah. Is still very, very expensive to make. Unfortunately, they haven't got to the point where they can make enough of it at a large enough volume for it to be a viable thing in energy storage of that size.
Talking about the Porsche electric again quickly, that the 718 replacement. Do you think people might not want to buy it because of what happened with the Taycan, or is it Taycan? Is the fact that they lost so much value so quickly because they're another cheap kind of sexy EV, aren't they?
Funnily enough, I also drove one of those this week.
Did you?
Yeah, it's a Taycan 4S that belongs to a friend of the channel, Kōmā, and it's a really good car. I hadn't driven a Taycan in a little while. And the last time I had one, I had many a grievance with it because I was living with it day to day. In the winter, it does atrocious economy. I was getting on average about 2.1 miles per kilowatt hour out of it, which is bad. And I did have an argument with Porsche about it, and the summary of which was basically, you should have driven it in the summer. Okay, you shouldn't have given it to me in the winter then if it's that much of a problem. And also, guess what? We live in Britain. It's cold for many months of the year. However, they have improved the car in terms of both hardware and software over the years. And this is the 4S. So in the Porsche tree, that's kind of like second from bottom. You got the entry level Taycan, then you got the 4, then the 4S. And so the S is the first one where you get like a really big performance boost, I guess. And this one already had, I do dislike the fact they sort of have been very cheeky with a lot of EVs and they'll use like peak power figures, which they won't generate all the time. But the peak power figure of this one is 520 horsepower. I think the continuous power output is about 430. But you put your foot down, this thing goes and it handles and it's got nice feel to it. And you're like, yeah, this is an electric Porsche, which is why I say with some confidence, I am sure the new Cayman and Boxster are fantastic, because if they can make a great big, 4-door executive saloon drive nicely, to make a 2-seater sports car go well, I'm sure it's quite easy.
How much is that car worth though, roughly now? Assuming, how much has it depreciated in that time?
I can't remember what it cost its first owner, but I think it might have been £90,000 to £100,000 or so. And today, that particular one is probably worth about 45, and you can get a 4S for about 40. The cheapest Taycan you'll be looking at is about 35, and Turbo S's have started to appear in the 50s. And you know what? Even for that amount of money, which is still a lot of money, of course, for 50,000 quid, it is a huge amount of car. There's 150 grand some of those not too long ago, depending on the spec.
I don't like them. I don't think they're sexy. I think they were when they first came out. I thought that looks cool because it was kind of like very sort of futuristic looking, but it started to just, I don't know, age. The design for me has aged really, really, really quickly. Ooh, I think I think so. I don't like them. I thought they were cool at first, but then now I just feel like they're just a bit overstyled. I do like the Audi equivalent though.
Oh yes, the e-tron GT.
The e-tron GT. And actually, we had the RS. Was it?
We did the RS, yeah.
That was sexy. I thought that was a sexy car. And what was the power on that one?
So I think that one was like 600 or so, because it gets a little bit less than the Porsche, but not really by a meaningful amount. I think the top end one is still like high 600s. So enough to get your attention, that's for sure.
Yeah. But what I think is cool though is that there was a time when the only way to make EVs sexy was basically giving them a load of power. And otherwise they weren't particularly well designed in terms of looks. They weren't as aesthetically pleasing. The Teslas were just, I mean, the S actually looked all right, but the 3 and the X just, I don't know, I just didn't like the way they looked at all. And also they're quite plain and a little bit boring in a lot of ways. But basically throw a lot of power at it. A friend of mine said it was the equivalent of stuffing a sock down your pants, because that's the only way you could get any emotion out of this thing was by shoving more power in it. And but I think what's nice now is that we do have EVs coming out that look cool, and I think this is I think most people make their decision as to whether they want to buy a car or not primarily based on how it looks. I mean, they look at the car and they think, can I see myself wearing that? You know, the analogy I often use is it's a bit like a jacket, you know. You could, go to a North Face store and find the lightest weight, warmest mountain hiking jacket that you could possibly find, and you could put it on and it just doesn't look right. You just feel a bit, that's not really me. And you will spend a little bit more money on a jacket that looks better than that North Face jacket. Is maybe a bit heavier, and maybe you have to wear an extra layer underneath it in order to get the same performance from it. But because you feel good wearing that jacket, you'll get that one rather than the perfect one. And I think with cars, it's the same. I looked at the Renault 5. I didn't care if it was an EV. I just wanted one.
Yeah. I actually also, I'll be honest, for purely selfish reasons, I am a little bit disappointed that Maserati have opted not to build the electric MC20.
Yes.
Because that's a sort of car that I was looking at and thinking like, yeah, it's going to be hellishly expensive when it's new. Very few people are going to be brave enough to buy one because they all know it's going to depreciate even harder than the V6 variant, which is already pretty scary. But after about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, I reckon they'll probably be down by about £250,000. And at that point, you look at it and go, yeah, okay, it's a 700-800 horsepower supercar, but I can run it and drive it for costs that would be not incomparable to a Tesla Model 3. The thing I like about performance EVs, you go and buy a performance petrol car, right? So obviously I've got the RS4 now, and a fleet of other stuff, and obviously you've got the Lambo, formerly the R8, and you're currently still tooling around in the RX-8. The RX-8 is the least forgivable of all of them, of course, because it has no economy and also no power. Actually, to be honest,
so much fun.
It's so much fun.
See, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need more power
No.
for that car to be, for me personally, quite a sexy car, because the driving dynamics are so good.
But also the RX-8 without that engine, it just wouldn't be the same.
No.
It would still be a very good car. And there are a whole bunch of other cars out there. And I think this is easy to forget, right? And I think this is also something, for the EV. There are a whole bunch of cars out there that we like to talk about with amazing engines. Ferrari V12s, Lamborghini V12s, even to some extent stuff like the McLaren V8s, Porsche's Flat 6, the V10s in the Lambo and Audis. There are lots of great engines out there. Of course, the rotary in the RX-8, you can't put anything else in an RX-8 and keep that car sold. You just couldn't do it.
No. People do, but...
Yeah, people do. Yeah, the engine in the S2000, that sort of thing. But those I would be heartbroken to see somebody convert to electric. However, there are also a whole bunch of engines out there. The clattery diesel that you had in the Golf, any number of faceless 1 litre, 3-cylinder turbocharged engines that just sort of do their job okay. Maybe one of my least favourite engines ever made, the Twin Air. That was a hateful engine that needed its turbo working at 110% just to deliver a sort of acceptable driving experience. Horrible, horrible thing. I would have any of those as an EV in an absolute heartbeat.
I'd have a DeLorean as an EV. I'd love a DeLorean as an EV.
Yeah, because the engine in that is particularly terrible.
Yeah,
And also, let's be honest, an EV DeLorean kind of fits with the theme of futuristic and stuff like that as well, doesn't it?
And it might actually have enough torque to light up the rear tyres.
It's also worth thinking about with some of the motors, especially in your more stripped back basic cars. You actually get to enjoy the noises and the whirs of all the motor and stuff. Actually, certain EV three-phase motors make quite an interesting sound.
So this is one of the things that Rimac, as most people would think of it, but correct pronunciation is Rimac. And that was actually engineered so that you could actually hear what was going on with the electric motors, and they tuned how much sound would come into the cabin so that you get that sense of speed from it. Obviously, you don't have things like gear changes, but you've got that constant surge of, I think what are they up to now on the new one, the Nevera? It's like 2,000 horsepower or something crazy like that. And yeah, I mean, they make interesting sounds. Now, if anyone's ever been in a race car that has got a sequential box with straight cut gears, honestly, the thing that you hear the most inside a race car is actually the transmission whine.
Yeah.
It's just that constant whee. It's like an EV.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Or a supercharger.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think supercharger's got a different kind of whine.
It's
but
higher pitched. But
yeah. But that sound of the straight cut gears inside the car is so loud in a race car compared to the exhaust that's coming out the back of it. That's pretty much most of what you hear.
You see, the Spring has all that EV electric noise, not by design. It's because it's got bugger all sound deadening.
Yeah, to save weight.
Exactly.
Like a Lotus Evija.
There we go.
Which,
speaking of which, that had its power pack in the bulkhead behind the driver as well, because they wanted that middle of the car weight sensation that you get from an engine.
It moves around like a really big, extraordinarily powerful Evora. Which is really interesting because that's actually a car that was designed from the off to contain a combustion engine, hybrid, or potentially full electric powertrains. And that was designed in the late 2000s.
Yeah. And that was the first Tesla Roadster platform, wasn't it? Oh, no, that was the
Elise.
Elise. That was Elise.
Yeah.
Speaking of Tesla Roadster, do you think the new one will ever come out?
No.
The what?
Tesla have been making or threatening to make another
the Roadster
for ages now. And it's one of those where surely if anybody's going to buy a mass market produced kind of electric sports
It was going to be
car,
$250,000.
was it going to be that much?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be, wasn't it effectively based on a Model S, but just with no roof on it, effectively? I think, and I know some massive claims were made about the power and the speed and everything else. I think the problem is Tesla do know, certainly for their volume things, how to make a reasonably good product, and it is very easy to bash them, and I have done that in the past. But there are also things about Tesla that other manufacturers just have not caught up on and are laughably far behind on.
One pedal driving.
Yeah, one pedal drive. But actually, honestly, it's stuff like the stereo in a Tesla is just really good. Like it's just really, really good. Like the stereo in a base Model 3 is better than the optional £4,000 upgrade stereo in a Ferrari 296, and that is just embarrassing.
Ouch.
Yeah, right. So because what's wrong with having a good stereo? And actually, EVs are great places to put good stereos because it's inherently very quiet. The Burmester in a Porsche Taycan actually is very, very good. Oddly, the Bose is particularly crap. Don't know why. But I think the problem with an EV sports car, and especially an American one, a lot of them are still being sold under the basis of being the fastest thing ever. And I think had Tesla brought the Roadster out when they kind of announced it, it would have been notably quicker than everything else.
Yep.
But I suspect they probably know that if they were to try and make it now, first off, £250,000 for a Tesla, I don't think anyone's paying that. And I just don't think it could do anything meaningful on any sort of racetrack, even probably in the quarter mile. And Tesla do tend to set their cars up quite well for the quarter mile. So the Lotus Evija would actually be beat on a quarter mile by Model 3 Performance, I think, just because of how they've set the motors up. So the Rimacs use actually the same supplier of motor as Lotus did, but Rimacs use different sized ones. So I think they have like maybe it's the same size on the front and then but a bigger one on the back or something like that. Whereas Lotus have equal sized motors front and rear, which means their 0 to 60 dash isn't quite as impressive as you'd think for a car with 2,000 horsepower. but it also just doesn't stop accelerating until once you're then looking at, say, 0 to 150 times, the Evija has just run away. Yeah. The problem is, of course, on the road, that means your 2,000 horsepower car is not going to feel as quicker as you think it would.
Well, Rimac have pretty much nailed that, because they ended up beating Tesla's 0 to 60 time on was it the Plaid? I think they So they started setting the crazy records at the claimed 1.9 second asterisk with 1 foot rollout, and when that was announced, I think that was like a week before or a few weeks before the Nevera was going to be launched. So they actually went back and re-engineered it so that they would get a 1.85 0 to 60 time with a 1 foot rollout by the same metrics. So that, because they couldn't have the Tesla being faster than a, I don't know, 2-3 million pound hypercar.
That is embarrassing. But also, you see, here's the thing to me is that I don't know why manufacturers haven't quite realized this. Now we live in a world where a 50 grand Kia is going to beat a 300,000 pound Ferrari in your quarter mile dash or 0 to 60 or whatever. I think numbers in some ways have become almost immaterial. Now, if you're 13 or whatever, numbers are going to be just as important as they ever have been. I think, most of us, and I think many people don't ever want to accept this, but I think it is a truth that needs to be understood. The McLaren F1 is only held in the high regard it is because for 10 plus years, it was the fastest car in the world. Based on one sole metric, like
top speed.
Yeah, top speed, right? The fact it also was made all out of carbon fiber, had a central driving position, was unbelievably expensive. That stuff is also part of the mythos. But I think had that car then been beaten 5 minutes later by something else, I do not think it would be viewed with the same regard as it is today. It's just because a whole generation of us grew up where for a very, very long time, that car held a record. And of course, when you're young, you're doing top trumps. Top speed is basically the ultimate.
You see, I'm at a point in my life where numbers are cool and interesting, but I don't care if a car goes 1 or 2 seconds quicker to 60 if compared to another one. I'm having much more fun in it. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys feel the same. It's all about the way the car feels. Unless, of course, it's like ridiculously slow, or unless its whole kind of point is, it has to be the quickest XYZ to beat everything. And I'm kind of like...
No, fun and engagement is always, I'm driving an RX-8, so obviously, I feel that way. There is another way that some companies are trying to make EVs sexy again, and that is with fake sounds. So you got the Dodge, was it Charger or Challenger?
Yeah.
In America. I actually saw a little social media clip of someone who got pulled over for having a modified exhaust. And he was like, I can't have a modified exhaust because it's an electric vehicle. He says, well, I'm giving you the ticket. You can argue it in court.
I would love... Do you know what? If that was me, I'd be like, give me the ticket. I cannot wait for this one.
Yeah. But, and it has this fake sound that comes out of the back. It's quite loud, apparently. And I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think that's a load of old tosh.
Agreed. I'm not interested in that personally. It's just like...
You can switch it off.
Yeah.
I'd be embarrassed to have that feature, to be honest.
Yeah. So listen, James bought another car recently, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say what it is yet because it's still a secret.
But what's not a secret is that he has car owner virus, because those cars are literally multiplying.
Yeah,
it's getting ridiculous.
They absolutely are. But I helped him source it. I helped him get it MOT'd, helped him get it all ready to go. I was driving it through a town and then the exhaust broke off right on the catalytic converter. So it went from a nice sounding car to, oh my God, this is the loudest thing I've ever driven. I was embarrassed to be seen in that car. And that was a petrol car with a real engine. To think how bad it would be to embarrass in a noisy car that doesn't even have an engine, to me is baffling.
Yeah, but then you'd have a volume control. Like you can turn the volume up and down. No, I personally, the fake sounds thing, I don't know. I'd be a little bit... I would only have it just for a laugh because it's kind of funny, but I would generally not want it to be actually active.
I'd want it to be big fart sounds, so it'd sound like just like flatulence going down the road. That I would find hilarious.
There are companies that you can get these aftermarket, bolt-on speaker kits for the outside of your car, and you got an app, and you can choose what you want it to sound like. You want it to sound like a Bridgeported rotary, you want it to sound like a V12. You've got all these different choices. I'm like, no. What I want is I want to be able to download a sound pack, and I want it to sound like something like a TIE fighter. That's what I want.
Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Are you advertising for the return of polyphonic ringtones? Are you,
but for your car.
Can you imagine, they just get your car magazine like, oh, do you want your car to sound like a TIE fighter?
Yes.
£2.99. Text your VIN number to this number.
That is it. That's what I want. I want to be able to drive down the street sounding like a TIE fighter. And when I'm about to, pull away from the lights in my ridiculously overpowered electric car, I want it to sound like the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a sci-fi nerd or anything, but
I think I have had some cars that did, but it wasn't intentional. You could also have it that when you go to flash the lights in your TIE fighter, it makes the appropriate laser noises.
Absolutely. Now we're talking.
Pew pew.
Now we're talking. All right.
I was going to say, here's the other gimmick. What is the car with the electric car with
5N, Ioniq 5N,
with the fake gears?
Yes.
No, but that I think is actually really quite cool.
Yes.
Because I think part of the problem that EVs have is because they obviously have this sort of typically one gear, it's very linear. The Taycan actually does have two, but you don't feel it changing. You lose. I think what makes old cars, and again, in fairness, I think the biggest problem that EVs have, and a lot of people don't want to admit this, but I believe it to be true, it's not that they're EVs. It's that they're modern cars.
Yes.
And most people dislike EVs made in 2025 for the same reason they dislike every other car made in 2025. Slowly, manufacturers, I think, are starting to realise that nobody likes haptics for everything. Why somebody at Ferrari ever thought it was a good idea to remove the start button and turn it into a piece of just glass you just tap, just go... That's not right. Luckily, they put it back. They have realised, they have learned. VW have realised that nobody liked it. Although I saw a post from the other day saying, "Oh yeah, no, that was a bit of a mistake, wasn't it? We shouldn't have done that." And it's like, dude, I hate to tell you this, but like, never mind hindsight. Like, you asked anybody, literally anybody, pull any random person off the street and put them in a Golf Marquet, and they go, "What is this?" Like, you would have known from the off that it was going to be really badly received. You just thought you could get away with it. What baffled me is the fact they then continued putting it in every single VW group car for years and years after everybody hated the Golf 8. And it's like, guys, this is not like BMW's iDrive, where when it came out, everyone hated it. And you're like, no, you don't like it because it's new. It's actually a really good system that's quite cleverly implemented. And even today, manufacturers are still catching up. Or like Ferrari with the controls on the steering wheel.
Oh, yeah.
When it was new, everyone's like, oh my God, what is this? This is all so silly. We go, actually, spend a day or two with it. You've done that well. You've done it.
I love it.
Right?
I absolutely adore the F12 to drive because of that.
Yeah, right. So it's one of those things. Once you've lived with it for a little bit, you go, actually, do you know what? No, this does make some sense. The haptics on the wheels never did.
No.
Not ever. And we all know they probably decided somewhere they could cut some cost. And again, manufacturers should consider themselves lucky that Tesla do stupid things like removing the indicator stalk from their cars to save some money. And I wouldn't mind it if, again, they replaced it with Ferrari-style buttons on the wheel that work quite well. They didn't. They were the nastiest, most horrible buttons that give you virtually no feedback, so you don't know if you've even pressed them or not. The click is then almost inaudible, especially, compared to the very nice sound system. So you just spend a lot of your time going, am I indicating? Am I not? Like, it's just one of these things where it's like, guys, like, come on now.
See, the thing is, a lot of people probably don't realise that most of these electronic alternatives to physical buttons are actually cheaper. I was speaking to, again, regarding the Catering Project V, and they were looking at what their options were for the dashboard. They really wanted that more traditional sort of mechanical dials, whatever you call it. And but it was just too expensive. So what they did is they just have a screen that's got a covering with these nice, very pretty metal surrounds on them, and the software is just designed to make it look like a dial. But they said it's a lot cheaper to develop these electronic screens than it is to do physical buttons. And I can kind of understand that. However, when you start dealing with, I don't know, buttons with haptic feedback, I think the electronics on that is a little different. There's a little bit more to a screen that has touch sensitivity and haptic feedback and all this other stuff that I'm not sure if it really is, especially if you've got switchgear that's already been developed, because that's the big issue, is the development of the switchgear. Not so much, well, manufacturing to an extent, but yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised though if, having no experience of any kind of automotive manufacturer or big corporation, that somebody somewhere who was really important in the company had a great idea, and everyone was like, that's a terrible idea. Wonderful idea, everybody. Oh, well, that's amazing, big boss. Yes. Oh, of course we can make that work.
The danger of yes men.
Well, and unfortunately, big corporations, regardless of whichever industry you're in, people are hoping for that next promotion, and they want to get a good feedback in their next annual review, and they want to keep their boss happy, because that's the person who's going to sign off whether they get to go to a conference or not. So unfortunately, the whole hierarchy is set up in a way where people can feel afraid to raise topics. I mean, to go to an extreme, the whole issue with the VW, what was it called? Dieselgate.
Oh yeah.
That was came about because people were sort of being put under pressure to achieve results that couldn't be achieved, and they just started making very tiny little, just cheat a little bit here and a little bit here, and all those tiny little cheats layered up over years. Even though people knew it was wrong, they were too afraid to speak up about it.
Actually, I think the people at the top of VW knew exactly what was going on. I don't think it was the case that if you get this high enough up the chain, someone will start to care. It's like, no, the order came from high up the chain to make this work. We don't really care how you do it. I mean, like as revolutionary as he was, and as much as he changed a lot of things, Piek was a bit of a tyrant to work for, and it was well known. I read a really good article on the intercooler about the development of the Flying Spur, the first Flying Spur, and the W12 engine, and he spoke about the fact that they would often have teams working in parallel on the same problem. And it's basically like, yeah, we've tasked you to fix this. By the way, we've also got another team working on it, and it's effectively a race between you. And that's not, to me, that's not cool management style at all.
Well, NASA used to do that, but the reason that they did that is they wanted to have multiple different ideas, and the idea that would work out to prove itself would be the one that they'd run with. But that's another story. But look, the question of, can we make EV sexy? Like, we've talked about making silly sounds. We've talked about fake gear changes, which James thinks is cool, and I'm not sure how I feel about it.
I've not tried one yet. I've not tried one, so I could be wrong.
Yeah, the premise of it seems interesting.
Yeah. I think all of those things just seem like gimmicks and fun. Don't get me wrong. Like, I would think it would be hilarious to drive down the road, like shifting gears in an EV. Just absolutely hilarious. Even, you could argue that the Koenigsegg, what's it called? The Jesko.
Oh, yeah.
No, not the Jesko, the CC850.
50, yeah. 50. Oh, that gearbox is that's witchcraft.
Yeah, it's like a 9-clutch, not DCT, a 9-clutch transmission.
I think it's about 3 gearboxes all in one.
In a tiny little compact thing, and it can either be automated, or you have 6 gears? Yeah, you got 6 gears.
6 gear H pattern pedal, and a clutch, and you can stall it.
Yeah.
Or you can have automatic drive mode with 9 ratios, or paddles with 9 different ratios. And I have been out in one and seen it working very briefly, and it really does work, and it is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and they've got a manual H pattern as well.
Yeah.
The paddles apparently are an option. They didn't have those at first, and customers said, "Oh no, I want that," so they'd added it as an option. But that's an example where you do not need any kind of shifting of gears.
Yeah.
But they've added it in to improve the engagement. And just because it actually does have, variable ratio gears, then...
But I think it's for the same reason that also, you and I prefer our single clutch automated manuals sometimes over a modern twin clutch, which just gives you this, seamless power delivery. You're like, there's a bit of fun in the imperfection.
Yes.
But I think overall, more interesting flagship cool cars built on EV platforms, just get them looking good.
Yeah.
I think that's what boils down to it, isn't it? I think with cars, what we've been really lacking of late, and Renault have proved it's doable, is that whole just make it look good, get people into the showrooms, and maybe they'll go, do you know what, actually, I was thinking of buying a Hyundai i10, or a regular Abarth 500 or something like that, just a normal car, and you go, actually, I just prefer this. The EV bit is kind of, a moot point. You go, I just like this. And I would actually think it would be really good if more manufacturers could start doing more long-term loans of these things. I think if people actually had the opportunity to live with one for a week or two, it just doesn't work for everybody. And I firmly believe that is still the case, and that may be the case for the foreseeable future. But there are a lot of people out there for whom it absolutely would work, but they just don't realise it yet.
Yeah.
And I think to help just sex it up a little bit, and I'd love to invite feedback from all on this one. Don't forget, it's landlord@theradiatorarms.com. I think we can improve the terminology involved, because, just charging your EV, there's no sexy way to say that, is it? It's like sounds like watching paint dry. It's just a bit boring. So I got a couple of phrases I'd like to try and bring into regular usage. One is nipping out for a bit of zap and tickle.
No.
And another being just going to go off and have a bit of how's your charger?
I knew you were about to say that. I knew that was about to come.
He wrote those. He wrote those over the last 2 weeks. I guarantee you, he's been dying to say that.
Workshopping that for months.
But before we wrap up, then my question to you guys is: if you were to go out and buy an EV now, what one is it you would buy?
Money, no object.
I'd say money, no object, and a sensible answer.
Okay. Obviously, the Rimac Nevera, money, no object. I think it's an amazing car. The technology that is in it and is coming to it, the further it develops, because they are still developing it.
Have you seen one?
In person, yeah. The new R obviously is the one that I would want. But yeah, it's an incredible machine, and I actually love the story of the company and where it came from. Literally, a guy in his garage in Croatia, EV swapping a E30 BMW, now owns Bugatti, and like, what's not to like? So I actually love his story, and he can drive. He can drive. I watched him on a Top Gear special the other day, and he put the CEO of Singer and Koenigsegg to shame with his driving. He was Stig level driving capability. So I got a lot of respect for him. But I'll give you a middle one. Definitely the Renault 5 Turbo E or E Turbo.
A290, the Alpine.
No. The wide body one.
Okay, right.
The limited
That's
edition.
your sensible one, is it?
I was about to say
that's the in the middle one. That's the in the middle one. And then the sensible one, my guess would be, I haven't driven one yet, is the A290. But I actually was pleasantly surprised by the Renault 5. So I think the A290 is probably just going to be a bit more of me, a little bit more dynamic, sporty, because the suspension is different on it. So hopefully I'll get my hands on one of those. And I would imagine that would be the way that I'd go.
What about you?
You kind of surprised me there, Ryan. There's one I think you missed out, and I think we do need to give honourable mention to.
Go for it.
The McMurtry Speirling.
Oh, actually, money no object, McMurtry Speirling. Yeah, yeah, the McMurtry Speirling Pure, definitely. I think that's 2.1 million. It's a single-seater.
That's the thing that looks like a shrunken Batmobile.
Yeah.
But the Michael Keaton Batmobile.
Hang on. Yes, I think I might have
that
seen
can actually drive upside down.
Yes, it's
because it's got a fan in it, so it can generate. It generates its downforce irrespective of speed, which is not a new concept at all, but they actually proved it and put it on a rig and drove the thing upside down, and then it got driven like 10 feet or something, or whatever, to prove that this car really can drive upside down. It just looks absolutely mad.
You have to watch its record run at Goodwood from a couple of years ago. It looks like it's been sped up. It looks like the film has been sped up. It is going round the corners so quickly, it doesn't look right.
It's a cheat code car.
Yeah,
it does look. He's like, no, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. Like,
0 to 60 in, I think it's like 1.3 seconds, and I think the top speed of the Pure was going to be 200. I think the original development car was around 150 initially, so it run out of puff at 150, but I think they've pushed it further now, and it's just a bonkers looking machine. And McMurtry Speirling. Sorry, I forgot that. I'll have one of those as well.
Yeah. I tell you what, there was a couple of Rimacs at Motor World the last time I was there, and they do look good. Like, and that's the thing. To me, that's like the one and only thing. You're like, cars like that, you're like, they're dream cars. They're never going to have one car. So you're like, I just want it to look really, really good. Like, I've already forgotten about the Ferrari F80 because to me, it's just pig ugly. It's just not a car that my heart desires. But and I tell you what, I'm going to have to eat some humble pie here because when it came out, I just didn't like the looks at all. The Lotus Evija, now I've seen it starting to move. And also now it's been out in sort of looks, at least, it's been out for quite a while. And I've seen a couple in person. You look at it and you go, yeah, there's an elegance to that car that most other modern hypercars and now many supercars have lost. Also, Lotus thing, I absolutely love it. And so that I would have as the sort of money, no object, silly thing. And to be honest, they'd probably be happy to give me a discount, but probably just not a big enough one for me to be able to afford it. And at the sensible end of things, I think right now with, nothing else, I think really to quite match it for what it is, Taycan probably is the best bet. I would like there to be a better alternative, but yeah, it's just a great driving car. Having taken it out the other day, I was just reminded of how blooming good it is. If it weren't for the fact that the range in winter just isn't good enough, I probably would have one. But also me, like with the silly amount of cars I now have, like having one EV doesn't make any sense.
You've got to do quite a few long distance drives as well, don't you?
Yeah.
So it's not like Will's scenario is different. Like most of what he has to do day to day is a 10 or 15 minute, two or more 10 to 15 minute runs.
Yeah.
And that is actually terrible for a diesel, but perfect for an EV. It makes complete sense.
I don't have to worry about it warming up at all. That is one of the things I love about it. If I have to nip into town or I have to nip somewhere very quickly because maybe it's raining or I've just got to be somewhere really quickly all of a sudden.
Does it have an app?
It doesn't have an app, this one.
Oh.
This one,
you have to get the extreme.
You have to get the extreme version. There is no app or nothing on this. It's, as I've said before, it's one of the reasons I purchased it because there is no app. There's no nothing, and I love it for that. No CarPlay. It's excellent.
As a parting thought, it must be doable. Someone's probably done it already. I know some of the Teslas make silly noises when you lock them and everything, but if you had the Challenger or whatever it is with its electric exhaust on it, surely you'd be able to just rig up a system so that on will you can just get it to fart. Can you imagine trying to find your car in the car park? Where's mine? Wait, where is it? So
there's aftermarket kits that allow you to do this stuff. Just saying.
I mean, again, also, do you know what I absolutely love Tesla for? Right, this is the best thing about the whole Model 3. Right, it's got a game in it you can play, and you play it using the steering wheel and the pedal as controllers. And if I was a kid and my dad had one of those, that would be the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So there are sexy things about EVs. Yes, I know there's 1,000,001 reasons why we shouldn't buy one, but there are also reasons to not buy everything. I just think that sometimes the narrative is stacked a little bit too heavily against an EV. And as part of that narrative, I feel it's my sort of, sworn duty to, see it from the other side a little bit. Because I think if everybody in life did that, sometimes the whole world would be a better place.
I think the main thing is no one here is saying, EVs are the answer. In fact, we're saying the opposite. We're saying that EVs are an answer to some people's problems, but they're not the only answer. But speaking of answers, Will, your choices before we conclude?
My choices, I would say, is I'm firmly in the camp of I want to see the Renault 5.
Yep.
I really want to drive one of those at some point. If they make the new Twingo, the Renault Twingo, which is coming out, which is I think is based on the Spring platform anyway, so should hopefully still be cheap. Definitely interested in one of those. I'm also really interested in the Hyundai Insta, which is coming out, which is another small one.
Yeah, Hubnut's doing a road trip in one of those at the minute, I think. Yeah.
He is. They kind of got an interesting kind of quirky look around them. And Hyundai have been known for the Ioniq 5, is it? And the other bits.
Yeah.
And
Is that based on the same platform as the Kia EV3, the Insta, or is it smaller than that?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's just those are interesting. And even though I don't want one, at some point, I feel like I need to drive the gold standard car for EVs, which is a Tesla. I need to try one at some point. Have you done the facelift Tesla Model 3 yet?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was the one that I got to review. I think it was new at the time.
Okay.
And do you know what? Honestly, it does have many failings, but as a package, as a car, it's really, really like. I know to a lot of people, myself included, the problem with Tesla is they're basically trying to turn the car into an appliance.
Yes.
You know, it's basically as sexy as a fridge. You're like, yeah, but we do all need a fridge. And sometimes if you just want to buy a fridge, you're like, what's the best fridge out there? You're like, it's the Tesla. You know, it's not going to be sexy. You're not going to show it off to your neighbors, but you're like, do you know what? It just does the job. Right? And it does it really well. And I would like to see again as part of like the improving things for everybody, the Tesla style system where you just plug the damn thing in, it charges and it bills you and you don't need to muck around with cards and stuff. That's how all of it should have been from day one. And I know there are many reasons why it's not that way, but it just works.
There is one small benefit potentially to your Spring not having an app, by the way, just before we conclude. And that is privacy. Because if it can't have an app, it's probably because it doesn't have any internet connectivity.
It does not.
And if it doesn't have any internet connectivity, it's not transmitting your telemetry about where you are, what you're doing, where you're going, how fast you're going, how fast you're braking. It's not transmitting that back to the manufacturer at all. And I can tell you, a lot of people don't know this, but most modern cars have that built in and are sending that data back all the time. I've actually worked on systems that consume that data and do useful, helpful things with it.
That was the most disgusting thing I've heard in my ears for a while, James. Thank you.
But not everybody wants everything about them being transmitted back to a motor manufacturer. And if it doesn't have that connectivity, then you're good.
Yeah, perfect. The Dacia Spring, is it Expression?
Expression.
Perfect for the tinfoil hat wearer.
Yes.
Too cheap to dob you in.
Well, there was that Porsche, wasn't it? That guy with the Porsche that had a big crash and they basically got a court order to get the telemetry. I think it was in Europe somewhere to get the telemetry from Porsche, and then they used that to prosecute him for driving dangerously or something.
Oh, dear. All right. With that, gentlemen, I think it is time to end. Time to unplug Will and say goodbye to you all. Don't forget, we will be here as ever at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning, first on YouTube, followed a week later by your favorite audio source, be it Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and heaven knows where, probably overheard on slightly too loud headphones in the corner of your local Waterstones as well. So from us, it's simply a thank you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
You actually pierced my soul with that noise. Honestly, through the headphones, that was one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard.